Good evening and welcome to Altos, your weekly Catholic news program here on Trinity TV. I'm Neil Parsonlal. Here's a look at your top stories this week. Prisoners perform at the John Cupid Carnival Village, showcasing their talent. A southern branch of the Society of St. Vincent de Paul celebrates its diamond anniversary. Bishop Clyde Harvey has some advice for Grenadians as the island celebrates half a century of independence. And as the merry monarch of Carnival begins its annual reign, we welcome back to the set Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon for his perspectives on the annual festivities. We go now to our top story. The John Cupid Carnival Village in the Queen's Park Savannah became a stage for talent last Wednesday evening. 56 inmates from the Golden Grove prison showcased their musical and artistic prowess in a show titled Bars and Stars, a symphony of human transformation. Our correspondent, Kaelan Jordan, has more on this story.
The 3.5-hour performances featured uplifting, cautionary, and humorous calypsos conveying multifaceted messages on societal issues, personal reflections, and the consequences of a life intertwined with crime. Some topics explored were Hate by Garvin Roberts, Pharaoh, Darwin Greenwich, Flood of Woes, Melissa Thomas, Somebody Dead, Aaron Charles, Parental Advice, Neville Glaude, and Mother TNT's Pain by Marlon Bitter Honey Lee. One particular performance stood out as inmate Melissa Coutain humorously sang Bread and Butter. The lyrics painted a vivid picture of their diet, a slice of white bread and one slice of whole wheat.
Cannot take it no longer. It's whole wheat that I want. I want a whole wheat and the next whole wheat. Concentrate, I cannot get that. The rule is a white bread and a whole wheat. And take some butter with that.
Deputy Prisons Commissioner Sherwin Bruce told Catholic News Altos that the Trinidad and Tobago Prison Service for the past 20 years has been celebrating the Wednesday before Carnival with a program that combines various competitions within the prisons. Traditionally held at the Woodford Square during the day, this year's event took a step up by being hosted at the John Cupid Carnival Village to attract a larger audience. The move has allowed for a more professional production.
People look at this as just a performance, people coming out just to sing. But for us to reach this stage, to have this event, we must go through first literacy. It encourages persons to learn to read and write. It encourages them to learn to write crime, so it encourages discipline. For us, we look at cryogenic needs. Somebody in prison would have fallen short because nobody wants to come to prison. So this, our cryogenic needs, we are even out to work on cryogenic things that would have caused the person to come to prison, and we use culture as one of the medium to do that. Also for the public to see what happens in prison, to be more accepted and have a more empathy for human beings. I don't use the word prisoners there for human beings.
The evening closed with an impromptu extempo performance featuring calypsonian Brian London, inmate Marlon Bitter Honey Lee, and prison officer 2 Wendell Bumpart.
Let me tell you something now. We have to go, please don't cause a row. It have people selling doubles and they selling barra. Marlon Lee, this is Brian London and Brian Lara. I want you to know we appreciate you being here, but it's getting late. I want to tell you people, thank you for coming by. We have to go, please. Bye-bye.
I am Kaelan Jordan for Catholic News Altos.
Well done to our prisoners. Crime continues to affect our nation, and the Catholic community has not been exempt from it. A 70-year-old Rio Claro parishioner was robbed recently by a cutlass-toting bandit outside the St. Therese Roman Catholic Church on the Naparima Mayaro Road. According to a newspaper report, the victim was sitting on a chair outside of the church around 3:15 p.m. when a man with a t-shirt wrapped around his face and armed with a cutlass approached her and announced a robbery. The bandit stole her purse containing a small quantity of cash, personal items, and 2 cell phones before making his escape. A report was made to the Rio Claro police station. 2 officers responded and conducted a search of the area, but did not apprehend the bandit. Staying in the southern region, the parish community in Pinal was alive from the 28th of January to the 4th of February as the St. Vincent de Paul conference celebrated its 60 years of serving the poor. The Pinal conference began its celebrations with Holy Mass at the St. Dominic's RC Church. Parish priest Father Robert Christo was a celebrant. The conference's president, Michael Phillip, brought greetings on behalf of the Society's General Council and the San Fernando Conference. On February 4th, a health outreach was held at the church's car park. There were immunization, diabetes, hypertension, and other wellness checks being performed by the Southwest Regional Health Authority. There was also the distribution of hampers, a used clothing drive, a mini bingo fundraiser, and light food items on sale. 4 past members were recognized by the conference for their service to the Pinal community: MacDonald Bedu and Angela Gill posthumously, Lynette Fraser, and Pearl Curtin. And in some news out of the Vatican, Pope Francis has pushed back against his critics on the controversial document Fiducia Supplicans. In an interview with the Italian weekly Credere, he defended the spontaneous non-liturgical blessings of same-sex couples and called out hypocrisy which exists on whom should be blessed. Here is Rome Reports with more on this story.
In an interview with the Italian weekly magazine Credere, Pope Francis commented on the controversy connected to the Fiducia Supplicans declaration. No one is shocked if I give a blessing to an entrepreneur who is possibly exploiting people, and that is a very serious sin. Whereas they are scandalized if I give it to a homosexual. This is hypocrisy. He described the document as having a heart geared towards being welcoming. The interview also touched on the role of women in the church, a theme that continues to be a topic of discussion for Pope Francis. The Pope said there are several women in the Roman Curia because, quote, they do better than us men in certain positions. Additionally, Pope Francis spoke about his health, saying that the church is, quote, governed with the head, not with the leg.
In the interview, the Holy Father also spoke about ecclesial movements which incorporate young people in pastoral duties. He said there was a danger of these movements becoming little churches. He said, the movements are good if they lead persons to the church, but not if they made the individual feel like a special Christian. Grenadians came together in a spirit of unity and faith for an interreligious service on February 7th, marking the nation's 50th anniversary of independence. Our correspondent, Kaelan Jordan, has more.
The gathering comprised various faith leaders, including representatives from Christian, Rastafarian, and Islamic communities. Bishop Clyde Harvey, chairman of the Conference of Churches in Grenada, emphasized the importance of gratitude and introspection during the celebratory period.
And there's an air of festivity and so on all around us. But it is easy for us to get caught up in that air of festivity and miss what is really happening in our own souls. And the celebration will be much less rich if we did not bring to it our own sense of gratitude for this land and for all that it means to us.
The bishop then called for a unified step to delve in deeper into one's faith perspective. He recognized Grenada's development, emphasizing nations accrue wisdom and experience over time. Quoting Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell, Bishop Harvey highlighted the fundamental question of Grenadans' identity and future.
As we face 50 and 100, who are we becoming as Grenadians? What does it mean to be a Grenadian? What will it mean for us as the future unfolds? Those are the fundamental questions, because we could have a lot of prosperity and not know who we are. But thanks be to God that we are able as a people, and we've had that kind of leadership over years, which has challenged us to look and look again and again and who we are becoming.
The service included readings by political leaders, with former Prime Minister Dr. Keith Mitchell, leader of the opposition, doing the first reading, and Prime Minister Dickon Mitchell doing the second reading. I am Kaylan Jordan, reporting for Catholic News, Altos.
It's time now for us to take a short break. But when we come back, we talk with Archbishop Jason Gordon about Carnival, which he describes as the soul of this country. As we go, here's a look at this week's Catholic trivia question. Let's hope you can get the answer. Welcome back after the break, and thanks very much for staying with us. It's Carnival time again, and all around us the sights and sounds of the annual festival can be found. As Catholics, should we retreat to the hills, or is there another way to view this spectacle? We have on set with us Archbishop Charles Jason Gordon, whose latest book, Rekindling Our Carnival Rhythms, Reigniting Our Soul, offers us some interesting perspectives. Archbishop, thanks very much for joining us again on set. It's good to have you back.
It's always good to be here, you know.
Yeah. But tell me something. What is an archbishop doing writing a book about Carnival and the madness of Carnival?
Well, I first want to note that interesting is always an interesting word when somebody uses it to describe something. Okay, let me start there. I think the Archbishop is the person to write about Carnival. Why? Because if you understand the history of Carnival, it's a pre-Lenten fete. It starts in Europe as a pre-Lenten fete. Carnivale, get rid of the flesh. So you go into the flesh to get rid of the flesh, preparing yourself for this Lenten period. And so the Carnival really takes its shape because of the Lenten. And so in that sense, it is a part of the Catholic thing and Catholic tradition.
Now, your writing over the last few years, for that matter, it's not just recently, but your writing going back to your analysis of Tin Man and that sort of thing, speaks of an archbishop, but who is first and foremost Trinidadian, or Caribbean. How has that Trinidadianness and that Caribbeanness grounded that kind of examination of the culture using the eyes of the archbishop?
So this started long before I was archbishop. When I was a priest, I wrote articles using calypso for spiritual reflection during Lent in the Catholic News. The first time when I told Michel de Bataille I had some things for him, and would he publish it? And he said, well, what is it? And I said, well, it's reflections on calypsos. He said, not in Lent. I said, but no, it is Lenten.
It is Lent, yes.
So I was a young priest. And Michel said, well, send it and let me see. Well, he published that. Because he saw that the calypso was actually speaking to the soul of society. And so my thesis has been, and it developed from then, that if you understand the Carnival, what you really are looking at is the soul of society.
The soul of the nation.
The way that a young analyst would take a dream of a patient and understand the soul of the patient from the dream that the patient has. Someone who understands could see the Carnival as an unearthing or an exposing of the soul of the whole nation.
And in your book, and thanks very much for my Christmas present.
You're most welcome, you know.
But in your book, the Rekindling, our Carnival Rhythms, you say Carnival has been a mirror of the nation's soul. When the nation is healthy, Carnival is healthy. When Carnival is unhealthy, it signals all is not well with the nation.
That's the thesis. That is the thesis. And I am saying all is not well with the nation now.
Precisely.
Because I'm also saying the Carnival is not healthy. And if you're not sure, read my Catholic News back page last week and this week.
And this week. But the unhealthiness then of the nation and the unhealthiness of Carnival finds that expression in so many different ways that we see. Now, one of the things you alluded to was that whole almost the regression of the mass back to almost the elitist standard.
Correct.
You know, how do we look at that now?
You know, that has been a real sore point for many people. And a lot of people say, I ain't getting you on this one, you know. This one, and because it is the underbelly of our pain as a nation. You know, I heard Wendell McRowan recently on an interview after I'd written the article, basically saying the same thing, and I'm saying that he's coming out of the Juve because everybody wants an all-inclusive experience. And what about the nutsman? What about the person who set up their little shop? What about, and once you have the all-inclusive, the little people who normally would make something out of Carnival that tides them over for the year, those little people are now left out because the Carnival masquerader is now, and then people are not coming to the streets much anymore because they're being stopped
that's part of the argument, because downtown Port of Spain now is a ghost town on Carnival Monday. Previously, that was the hub.
Everybody
of
was
Carnival.
there.
And then even the Savannah, so the spectators that line the streets are no longer there. They've gone to the Soccer-drome, so that's further west.
Yes.
Symbolic in so many ways of that move back to the elitist.
And once, when you look at the Carnival now, you know, Carnival used to be about beauty.
Yes.
For me, the heyday of Carnival was the 60s, 70s. Leon,
Barclay,
Mitchell. I mean, it was not only drama, but it was beauty, it was creativity, it was theater. Depiction, it was theater. And you put on your mask, you played your mask. Now, when you give up, and this is Catholic theology, once you move from beauty, what fills its place is concupiscence. Because once you're no longer going after beauty, what is noble, what is true, what is inspiring, once you're not going there, all you could do is sensationalism and trying to excite more and more. And that means you have to up the ante constantly. And that's called addiction. And you're going into this direction where the costumes are becoming more skimpy, more revealing, and therefore you have to rope the band off because, I mean, really. but
even that roping off of the band, you know, is symbolic again of that corralling
the class.
The class.
So in this week's Catholic News, I cite a calypso from the 1920s speaking about the white people on the lorries. By the 1930s and 40s, they came off the lorries. And they were, by 50s, they were off the lorries. There was a rope, but the rope wasn't to keep people out. It was to keep the band together because it was 50, 60 people. Then by the late 50s, there was no rope, and there was a total integration. By 1974, Valentino is singing about Carnival as the one place where race and class is mixed together. And when the Carnival done, the race and class is back on the street again. So by 1974, the Carnival was the integration. And the society's soul was breathing differently. Yes, we had black power. Yes, we had, we had turmoil, but the turmoil was leading to social integration. Now we've gone back to social segregation one more time. And that's not, all is not well with the soul.
But in the midst of that, and we take it that, and we accept that all is not well with the soul. But in the midst of that, you have the paniards.
Well, you know, that is you know, that is music to my soul. Yeah. So, and I make a distinction, a clear distinction in the article this week between Carnival Tuesday and the Fetes. Because Monday is a different carnival.
Yeah, Mondays are different.
Because Juve is still all is all. And the Juve, the Monday Mass is still a kind of a all is all. So the Tuesday and the Fetes is what have moved to the exclusive. But the Paniard is a model of national development that is a treasure that we don't get and we don't yet understand.
In fact, in the book, you describe the Paniard as a sacred space, one which transcends race, class, and gender, another indication of the sacredness of Pan. So while the soul is hurting on the one hand, and we do have that blessedness and brokenness,
correct,
you know, living in tension with each other, but talk to us a bit about the discipline of the panyard, pan in schools, schools in pan, and where that takes us with respect to what is happening with the entire education system, the indiscipline and the violence that we see in schools these days.
The same little fella that school can't teach comes into a panyard. That same little fella learns how to produce music without yet knowing music. That same little fella drills and is willing to be disciplined in the panyard and understands that you have to be disciplined and lives with it. That same little fella is a star boy on Panorama Night, on the front section, or in the rhythm section, or in the bass. That same little fella is a star because he has learned something that the rest of society will not teach him. And I call it the Ubuntu philosophy, because it is really what South Africa raises up, that I am because we are. The rest of our society has a false development a false model of development, which is I am because I have money. I am because I could be exclusive.
And I have done this on my own.
I am because my band roped. I am because my community gated. So the rest of the community has this kind of arrival syndrome by money. And the panyard has an arrival syndrome by becoming part of a community that you are in the same trench with everybody else. And it's us that have to work together if we're going to achieve our goal. And so the whole model and the whole aim of a pan side is really towards community building.
And you speak of the band like Renegades, for instance. You alluded to Renegades. You know, in the heart of a community that is depressed, in the heart of a community that is crime-ridden, but yet still is able to produce such excellence.
Yes, and the other thing with the bands now, the bands are international. People come every year from all over the world to play with a band, and you see it more and more and more.
Yeah.
But the same little fella is still there in that band. I mean, they have guys in the panyards, and the leaders will tell me, you know, we have to drop them home on a regular basis. And the fellas will say, but you can't come further than this, you know, because you ain't gonna be safe. And so they still come from difficult communities. So you have young men and women from difficult communities. You have middle class. You have musicians who are trained musicians. You have international musicians coming in, all in one community. Now that is how Trinidad was in the 1970s. That is how Trinidad is today in a panyard, but it's not the model that drives Trinidad right now. How is it possible that that little fella could be a star boy in a panyard, or that little girl could be a star girl in a panyard, but cannot pass maths or English or any subject or their subjects in a school curriculum? That's where Lloyd Best was brilliant and talked about school in pan, pan in school. If we taught them how we taught them in the panyard, they would learn differently.
And in some, looking at the Carnival and a Catholic response, we talk about, you know, God in culture, God of culture, God against culture. What I hear you saying is that we need to be, that in order for us to impact or affect the culture, that we must understand what our role is in
Exactly.
it as well.
You know, Carl Jung used to say, if cleanliness is next to godliness, differentiation is right after it.
Okay.
We tend to brush broad and wide. No, let's go specificity. The pan is a beautiful model. Carnival is not bad or evil. Carnival is a multiplicity of things. Most of them are beautiful, noble, great, honorable, and inspiring. I think of the Moko Jumbies. I think of the junior. This week I went to the junior carnival and sat in the savannah for a good part of it. I think of the children's carnival masquerade. I think of so many beautiful elements of the carnival. Then we have an element that has been taken over by commercialization, that has moved it from the community to China and moved it to a making of money as opposed to an inspiration and a reach for beauty.
Should we use then our Lenten period to really reflect a little more deeply on that giftedness that we have, and the brokenness, and see where God is leading us as church and as country. Should this Lenten period then, in your opinion, be that moment of reflection for us as a society?
And I think that that's part of what the church offers back to the society. And I mean, it's why I wrote the book, because you have two parts. Everything is okay, or nothing is good. And I want to differentiate. Right. Here's the good, here's the bad, and here's the real ugly. But yes, we should be reflecting, because if my thesis is right, the Carnival is a mirror of the soul of society. What is Lent about? Reflecting on the soul.
Reflecting on the soul.
Not just the individual soul, but the collective soul. Because the collective soul does impact the individual. And we have been impacted by a false model of development that has to do with money and aspiration for money.
As we close, your predictions. Who's going to be the Panorama champions?
No. You ain't catching me on that. I'm not going down that road. I'm not going down that road.
Your Grace, thanks
very
much.
If you come out of TV, I'll tell you.
Out of TV. Your Grace, thanks very much for joining us.
But I pray for all the bands, and I thank God for every one of those bands.
And I pray
for
that
their dedication.
All stars will align on that evening. Thanks very much for staying with us. We'll be back after this short break.
Altos, from the Latin altus, meaning high. Every Friday night we feature the top news items hot off the press. We are taking a leap of faith on Trinity TV. Jump in with us for this new and exciting experience.
And thanks very much for staying with us. Here's a look at some of the upcoming events in the Archdiocese. And Catholic News editor Raymond Sims gives us a preview of what's in this week's edition of the Catholic News.
In the Sunday, February 11th issue of the Catholic News, we pay tribute to the beautifully creative parts of Carnival. Take a look at our colorful center spread as Shakila Daniel talks about her lifelong love affair with traditional Mass. And with the season of Lent around the corner, we have the schedule of some Ash Wednesday Masses in each vicariate. I am Raymond Sims, editor of the Catholic News.
Remember to pick up a copy for yourself and one for your neighbor or one of the shut-ins in your community. As we close, we thank you. Thank you again for tuning in to Altos this evening. Carnival is color, Carnival is Mass, and Carnival is about children, and they can't be left out. We leave you this week with the children having their time at the Red Cross Kiddies Carnival last Saturday. See you next week Friday as we begin our Lenten journey.
In the Sunday, February 11th issue of